What's up, you beautiful people? Welcome to another video. So the single hardest thing that you have to master in the game of business if you want to unlock fast growth, easy growth, is the ability to correctly identify and then remove the biggest constraint within the system at any given moment. And this is deceptively difficult, even when you understand the theory of constraints, when you know that there is a thing in your business that is limiting everything else. You can know the theory, you can have read the books, you can understand the concept, but it's still incredibly difficult to apply in practice. And there's a couple of reasons for that I want to talk about here that will help you maybe give you the context, the clarity that you need to be able to correctly identify your own constraints inside your business. But I'm thinking about this morning because a number of years ago, I had an onboarding call with one of my students. And this was he's a very successful gentleman, actually. Since we've had that call, his business is like, I don't even know, like 10x, 20x, 30x. It's been crazy growth and he's doing fantastic now. But off the back of that conversation, 160-minute strategy call, in that we were able to identify, here is the constraint that is sitting right in front of your face that you haven't even noticed. And he made a comment at the end of that call, which I've always found, it's a very common comment. Every single time I hear it, I'm like, yeah, that's interesting, but I'm not surprised. The comment is, I thought I understood the theory of constraints, and yet somehow I missed this. It's so obvious now that you point it out, right? And the reason for this is because you can't read the label from inside the jar. You can't see the picture from inside the frame. You're too close to it. But specifically in this instance, the problem is that my student was falling prey to what I call the map is not the territory. So here's what this means. This student, he works with other business owners to help them grow their businesses. And one of the things that they pride themselves on is their data analytics, their KPI collection process. So they collect all the KPIs, the key performance indicators. They know exactly what levers to pull within the business, presumably, right? But the problem that I found is that dashboards and KPIs, numbers, don't tell a story. You tell the story. Numbers don't lie, but I can make them say whatever I want them to say. Numbers are just numbers on a screen. And the problem with judging your business and its constraints based off of numbers is that you don't have the context. You don't understand. See, you could have the same number, two different entrepreneurs. They're both making $80,000 a year, but one of them is working 80 hours a week. They hate everything that they do inside the business. They're on the verge of burnout. The other might have $80,000 of revenue, but they're only working 40 hours a week, but they're working with terrible clients. You can't get that information by looking at the data, the KPIs. And so what you need to get into the skill set of is, yes, you do want to collect data. You want to have all that information, but it's then understanding what are those numbers trying to tell you without the tainting, the tinting of your own perspective. Because a lot of times when we come in with our own expectations of what we think the problem is, that directs our activities. But you can't come into the numbers with your preconceived narratives. And so that's why we do the one-on-ones, because in that we can have a conversation. And in that conversation, you can hear the stresses. You can hear the stress points. You can start to realize like, oh, the numbers on the spreadsheet said, in this instance, the cash flow is fine. However, when you hear them, you understand that the timing of the cash flow is incredibly problematic and is causing tremendous amounts of stress. And so hearing that the cash flow issues were causing him stress, even though on the spreadsheet they never even showed as being in the red or even yellow as an indicator, we correctly identified we need to solve that first. So you have a metric that on the sheet looks green, but in fact actually is the constraint. And so the map isn't the territory. Here's what that concept means, is that a map is only ever a representation of an area, right? Let's take this room, for example. I could create a map that is very basic. That is just like one big rectangle with a couple of different circles and squares to show where the plants and the tables and the chairs are, right? But that's not the room. It's a representation of the room. And you could make it more high fidelity. You could go into more detail and you could show all the leaves on that plant. You could show all the fibers on this chair, but it's still just a representation of the room. It's not the room. For the map to be a perfect indicator of the room, it would have to be a perfect replica of the room, and therefore it's no longer useful as a map, right? Because now you can't you can't roll that up and put it into your pocket. It is literally just the room. And so the map isn't the territory, and this is important because dashboards only ever are maps. They are only ever coordinates in time. They do not give you the lay of the land. They do not tell you what's shifted in the meantime. They do not tell you what had to be overcome and how difficult it was to traverse that terrain. And so if you get locked into just thinking you can run your business off of numbers without context, without understanding the underlying stories, you're going to find yourself in this position that my student did, which is everything is green on the dashboard. I don't understand why I still am not where I want to be, why I feel stressed, why I feel overwhelmed, why this thing isn't growing how I expected it to. It's because there is a problem in there that the numbers themselves can't tell you without first understanding the underlying story. So that is today's lesson. If you guys have questions about the theory of constraints and how you can apply it to your own business, drop constraints down in the comments. I'll send you a little diagnostic tool that will help you ask some of the questions that will uncover the most likely culprit of the thing that's holding you back. So drop constraints down in the comments. I'll see you guys in the next video.